The interface inside of ZBrush is something that can be changed quite a bit. But one of the first things that you're probably going to want to do is just adjust it so that you can see the Windows taskbar. Now I'm looking at this on a second monitor, basically my Cintiq, so I don't have the taskbar anywhere around here. But the process that I show you will work. So you come up here to minimize, maximize. Alright, now yours is going to jump all over the place depending on what you've done. And you just click and drag the borders around until you get them to where you want. They'll usually snap to the top of the taskbar. You can click the top here to move it, and then you go to Preference and you go Store Config. Once you've stored the configuration, then ZBrush will always come up on that screen and at that size. Now the way that you know where well, not the way, but the way ZBrush knows where to put itself is actually inside of a text file that you can move with you from one computer to another, and that you can also delete, because sometimes you need to delete it. For example, sometimes you might have stored ZBrush in a second monitor, but you might not have that second monitor, and ZBrush keeps going to the second monitor. You don't know where it is. You got to delete one file to get yourself back on track. And that one file, let's go into it, is in Z Startup Configs, and it's called ZBrush Window Startup Size. Okay, that's where it stores this information. So if you're running into any problems, you simply delete that file, and then ZBrush will start up in its default position just like it did the first time you installed it. Okay, now a couple of other things to know about the interface. You've got a couple of preset interface layouts. They'll give you a sense of how you can do this yourself, but I'll walk you through some of the steps. One of them, let's just go here. One of them is set up for, say, texture painting. This is a bit of an older one. This is just called, I think it's minimal. Yeah, almost nothing in here. This is one I developed a while back that was designed to emulate, say, Maya or Photoshop. So all of the brushes are along the bottom, the controls are along the side, and then the brush controls are along the top. Okay, more Photoshop-like. Alright, there's a few others. We've got our default, left, right, minimal. That's the Sculpto one, and looks like we're back to default. Okay, now if I've stored a custom interface, I'm just going to come in here and say restore my custom UI. There we go. That may or may not be default. You've also got colors that you can switch out. Just gives you a sense of how things can change around. Back in ZBrush 3D. Okay. A little Technicolor. Lots of these guys. Let's see if we can get through them. Let's go back. Okay. Now we're back to the default. So how do you get in there and customize your UI to start to add buttons where you want? Well, you've got to go into Preference, and we've got to go into Custom UI. And actually, they've moved it. It's in Config, and you say Enable Customize. The older documentation will say Custom UI. Alright, as soon as you go into Enable Customize, then all of the available slots kind of open up. So what you'll notice is that we now have an opening here, we have an opening along the bottom, got another opening below that bottom. You know, these are all places where you can put interface items. And one of the interface items I like to drag into my interface is in Brush, and it's in not modifiers, but auto masking. I like to drag backface masking into my interface so that I can quickly access that. So the way you do it is you find the interface item, you press Control and Alt, and you drag it wherever you want to go. You can move that around. See these different parts that open up, become accessible to me. I'm going to put it right here on the shelf at the bottom. If you want to get rid of it, you just press Control Alt, click, and drag it into the canvas. It's the same for any of these buttons. If you want to get rid of them, Control Alt, drag them in. But I'm going to take this guy and move it back in. When you're done, you turn Enable Customize off, and you store, where to go? Store config. And it says, hey, good job. That'll be what you see every time you start. And then you're going to be good to go. Alright, so we've stored the custom UI. Now the next thing I'm going to do, and I do this every time I start ZBrush, I set range to 0. I don't like to see that gradient in the background. I like a nice, simple, gray background. You can change the color. You just click in back, and you drag to some color that you want. So right now I'm just dragging around. So one of the ways that you might do that is you set the color first. So the little swatch updates with it. And then you can come in, drag to the swatch, and it'll update. Okay, those are all the different things that you can do. So in the document, I'm going to come back. I like it to be a dark background. Dark backgrounds tend to be a little bit, how do I say it? It just shows off the model a little bit better. Okay. One thing you might have noticed as well is that our material setup is relying on this color. So what you might want to do is just set a color, and let's just leave it back at that. There we go. I'm happier with that color. The last thing I want to mention about the interface and about your own setup is that width and height of your document are largely automatic. So just keep that in mind. ZBrush is going to figure those things out. Yours are going to be different than mine. But you can come in and increase the size. If you want to increase the size, you want to turn Pro off. That does not mean professional. It means proportional. So in order to change it to a non-proportional size, you got to turn Pro off and then adjust the sliders. And as soon as you've adjusted the sliders, you can click Resize. Hit yes. And then as soon as you do that, you're going to realize, uh-oh, something weird happened. My model is no longer in edit mode, and I'm in that weird space Ryan mentioned. So just go into edit mode, and then press Control N to clear it, and you'll be good to go with this massive canvas that's stretching all the way across. Now I don't need that, so I'm just going to come into Document and say New Document. I don't want to save changes. I'm going to redraw my model, go into edit mode, and then press F to frame it. F as in Frank. And we're ready to go from there.